draft class, the freshmen who are now about to matriculate into their sophomore seasons. Caleb Williams is one of those players who's poised to make a sophomore jump. This week he spoke about his new head coach, Ben Johnson, and expectations heading into year 2.
Today we had our first quiz in a QB room, and it's not like a real quiz where you go up and write stuff. It's just us. We went over a few things yesterday, talked about a few things, and Ben walked in this morning, flung open the door, made a grand entrance, and then we got to work of him testing us about what we talked about yesterday and things like that. So it's one of the great things about the sport. Every day is a challenge, and today we got our first one.
Caleb's rookie season had its ups and downs. He took care of the ball just fine, ranked 3rd in interception percentage and 6th in touchdown to interception ratio. He threw just 2 picks in his last 14 games and wasn't afraid to use his legs either. On the other hand, he did have the worst QBR in the league on passes 20 yards or more downfield and on 3rd down. He also took the most sacks in the league. So lots to work on there. D. Wood, how can the Bears ensure that Caleb Williams takes that next step in his development this year?
Well, we've already seen them start to address the issues. When you watch Caleb Williams last year, a lot of it was the immediate pressure up the middle. So what did Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears do? They literally remade the interior of the offensive line, trade for Joe Thuney, obviously, from the Kansas City Chiefs, Drew Dowman coming over from the Atlanta Falcons, Jonah Jackson, who they brought in from the Los Angeles Rams. So you seeing the formula for what Ben Johnson wants to do, especially coming from the Detroit Lions. He wants to fortify that offensive line and give his young quarterback the comfort to go out there and play from within the pocket and play within structure.
Dan, some teams criticize the Chicago Bears front office for overpaying offensive linemen, something I just couldn't relate to when I saw that. But anyway, one of the things to look for is I think Jared Goff, when he was under Ben Johnson's tutelage in his first year, his sack total was reduced by 12. Look for something very similar with Caleb Williams. I think they've done a great job addressing the offensive line, but in all seriousness, I think the way they call the game, and we're looking at DeAndre Swift here, look for this Bear offense, guys, to be balanced. And that's what Ben Johnson wants to do. I worked with him in Miami. He wants to be able to run the ball, control the line of scrimmage, and then take shots down the field. So to me, Caleb Williams will be sacked less because of one of the things that Ben Johnson does so well in terms of controlling the game, in terms of how he wants to call it.
That sack number almost has nowhere to go but down. He was sacked 68 times last year. That is tied for the 3rd most in a season since sacks were first tracked in 1963. To last year's 4th overall pick, wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't have the rookie season a lot of people might have expected him to have, but his quarterback, Kyler Murray, expects big things for his young wideout's sophomore season.
For him to have 8 touchdowns and feel like he didn't even scratch the surface is I think that's saying something. Obviously, me and him have to be better, that we will be better. But I loved where he was mentally at the end of the season. I remember the jump for me from year 1 to year 2 was astronomical. Like, God, the game slowed down so much for me. All I tried to do year 1 was get better each and every week, improve on the things that, I needed to improve on. And I think in year 2 now, he's ready to, go off.
Marvin Harrison Jr. was definitely Kyler's go-to guy last year. His QBR was 14 points higher when targeting Harrison compared to all others, and 8 of his 21 touchdowns were thrown to him. Kyler's off-target percentage when throwing to Harrison was more than when compared to his other receivers, but his average air yards, 13.3 on those passes. So, Mina, not the season I think a lot of people expected from Marvin Harrison Jr. right out of the gate, but you see the potential. What went wrong last season that you want to see fixed in year 2?
Just consistency, Dan. I think you're right to highlight the expectations. I had really high expectations, for Marvin Harrison Jr. And there were points last season where he hit that. I think of the Rams game where he went crazy, passes downfield. And then I actually thought in the final game of the season, which didn't matter, Week 18 versus San Francisco, you saw the receiver that you thought you were getting with the 4th pick overall. So I think for this next year, it's really going to be for Harrison Jr. expanding the route tree, working on some of those concentration catches, and just establishing a floor for himself as the wide receiver 1 in the offense, because there were very high highs, but then there were a few games there where he disappeared. That cannot happen moving forward.
Mina, I see a similar trajectory. I go back to what Kyle Murray said, which is just fundamentally more time on task. They just don't have a lot of time under the new CBA. And this Cardinal offense, to me, is a little underrated. When you look at Trey McBride, Michael Wilson, to me, is a little bit underrated. And again, if you're going to double Marvin Harrison, he'll create opportunities for others. If you single him because of his size, his route running ability, and most importantly, his hands, I think he has just great natural hands. He should have a dramatically better season. I'm very bullish about this Cardinal offense led by Marvin Harrison's development.
He did catch 8 touchdowns last season, which is tied with Larry Fitzgerald and Anquan Bolden for the most by a Cardinals rookie, so good company there at least. Another player we're watching for a possible big sophomore jump is Bo Nix, who may have been the surprise of his freshman class. Showed a lot of promise last season, and he can be even better if he improves in a few areas. He ranked top 10 in QBR in the red zone and in the fourth quarter while being sacked at the 3rd lowest rate in the NFL. However, he did struggle against the blitz and throwing downfield. His completion percentage over expected also ranked 28th in the league. So, Mina, what would you like to see from Denver's quarterback going into his second season?
Yeah, I think you want to see, as sort of is highlighted by those stats, more production on throws that aren't screens, which is a pretty strong component of their offense. I'm really looking for improvement in that intermediate 10 to 20 yard range where he was 29th in QBR. Now, I want to add that's not all on Bo Nix. He had very good pass protection, but outside of Cortland Sutton, not really a group of world beaters at receiver, and I suspect that's a position they're going to add to potentially in the first round of the draft. They also had a fairly middling run game that I think could be improved a lot. Another thing that they might look to target early in the draft. But I am very optimistic about this offense this year with the addition of one of those players, Evan Ingram, as a tight end. I think Bo Nix's improvement will be amplified by the improvement of the players around him.
I also see Bo Nix improving. I think he could be a top 10 quarterback. I was wrong on him. I didn't see the high-end athlete that he is. He had 430 yards rushing. His movement skills was way better than I realized. I agree, Mina. I think at some point they'll probably add a running back, but to have this sort of athleticism really puts a lot of pressure on defense. And I think the other thing we're going to see from Bo Nix, because Denver has such a good defense, they had those 2 good players from San Francisco and Greenlaw and Hufanga. I'm sure Sean Payton's going to remind Bo Nix, hey, we don't lose the game on offense. We have this great defense. So when he can make plays with his feet that we're looking at here, hopefully an improved run game, this offense should be a lot better, and I think Bo Nix has a chance to be a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Bo Nix. I love the way Bo Nix plays, and obviously Mina pointed out, I think, being more accurate down the field, creating those explosive plays will give a different element to this Denver offense. But I think the real key, I think the Denver Broncos going to add another running back early in this draft. Because I think they, first and foremost, they want to establish their line of scrimmage. The Broncos have a very good offensive line. They want to be physical. They want to run the football. And with running the football, the play action game, the intermediate area of the game is going to open up even more. So I think by adding a running back, a dynamic running back to this offense, will enhance Bo Nix even more in the intermediate and deep part of the passing game.
There's no doubt about that. But Mike T, one thing you said was interesting to me about the defense. They've made a lot of moves on defense this year. In your experience, if you're bringing along a young quarterback, how does improving